I'm going to take a quick peek at Kittenbot.js just to show you here what's going on. If you're not a Node.js developer, but if you know JavaScript, you're pretty much halfway there. Basically, this is just using Slack in the bot kit, basically a few packages, interacting with Google Cloud Secret Manager, and then we have some asynchronous calls for logging into Google Cloud, accessing the secrets, and then basically working with Slack. We've got a bunch of stuff going on in here that you could pick apart later on. Again, application doesn't really matter. It's just something that we're packaging up for Cloud Build and then Cloud Run, and it's going to be effectively a Slack bot. Now, could you do this in Python? Absolutely. All of the bots that I've ever written for, say, Reddit, Reddit, Slack, Discord, Twitter in the past even, I've used Python for them. There are packages that are similar as well. The only tweaks you'd really need here is, obviously write it in Python, be able to deploy it using Python instead of Node, but really process tends to be typically the same, just different syntax here. What we are looking to see here, though, is that this bot is looking for either hello or hi, and then it's going to reply with a little picture of a cat face, and it's going to say meow. So that's all this bot is doing. You can extend it, and there's an extra credit page in here for making it a conversational bot, but you can make this thing do so much more, where, again, if you wanted a bot in one of your channels, hey, talk to it, go retrieve some information for me or something like that. But the rest of this page basically just kind of walks you through Kittenbot, what it's doing. It walks you through the Docker file. And all that's really saying is, what dependencies are necessary, what version of Node.js are you using, bundle up the application, and then how do you launch it. So I could run this as Node Kittenbot, and it would run, without Docker. But by putting this into Docker, we basically are making a nice little image that we can push up to Cloud Build, have it build for us and check to see what's going on, and then we'll send it to Cloud Run to actually run. Okay, so that's our JS file. The Docker file's in here as well. As I mentioned, looks exactly the same as what you say here, so not too much to really talk about. Again, the application doesn't matter. It's just something that we're packaging up. Next step, let's actually build this Docker image. So first things first, we have to set our project ID, and this is going to be useful at the very end when we go to clean things up too, because we'll make everything based around the project ID. Again, your project ID is just right here, but we can programmatically set it as well by running a little bit of bash trickery to kind of pull that out of our Google Cloud Shell. So we've set our project ID. If I echo it, to see it's Fredericks-CIS680, yours will be different, but matches what you see right here, matches what you see up here. Again, an ID. So life is good there. Okay. So, assuming you haven't done this before, depending on where you're at in the class, maybe you did already, let's enable Cloud Build. This will build our Docker image, and we need to actually do the packaging up and sending to Cloud Build. So the next step here, gcloud, again, our favorite command here, work with the build engine, not the Doom build engine, but the gcloud build engine. We're going to submit our project for building. The tag's going to be gcr.io, our project ID, and then slack-codelab. And the period here means we're just building the current directory. Make sure you are in that start folder for this. I'm going to cut here because this is going to be, again, like a 2 to 3 minute build if you have done the cloud build stuff already, but it'll take a hot moment. So see you in a moment. Hot moment, yeah, okay. Told you it's that kind of day. Okay, so we are back. The build was successful. Again, we are basically letting the Docker container get built by Google and then pushed to our container registry. If you go to the container registry in your cloud account or click this handy dandy link, you will see your actual build is up there ready to go. You see Firebase here, future lesson, but here's our Slack CodeLab build. And we see a bunch of information about it. And hey, look at all these other builds I've done on this particular tag here. Incredible. It's like he's done it before. But that exists. We can look at the logs of it if we want. There's a lot of things that we can pull up here. Important thing is that we see that it was successful. You can scroll this a little bit, though. So looking through basically the build log in the terminal here, we see npm warnings, npm deprecations, what npm is doing. Basically, if you have an issue with Node or npm or whatever language you're using, the errors will show up here, and then you'd have to go and fix it and then basically resubmit the build if it was an issue. But we have that up on our registry. We can now deploy it. So obviously the next step is going to be, hey, let's deploy this Cloud app to run. So let's enable the Cloud Run API if you haven't already. Mine is enabled. We are going to allow Google to fully manage this project. We're not going to use another platform to do that. And out of utter and sheer laziness, because being in the Midwest, we're kind of halfway between US East and US Central, let's just leave it as Central 1. And next step, this is a critical step, we're going to set our service account. Now, pay attention here, because I'm going to copy and paste this into my shell, but I'm not hitting enter yet. There is a slightly out-of-date issue with the code lab where this name does not exist. And the reason why I say that is what we're doing here is we're setting our service account email address as a environment variable that's going to be used for deploying. It's also going to be used for authorization and authentication for our app with that secrets manager. This command is using, again, a little bit of bash trickery to pull out whatever the email is for the default compute service account. This will fail if you try to run it. Actually, sorry, it will fail silently. And I should mention, this was not the error I found before. This one I knew was a problem. I still don't know what the actual error was. But if I were to run this, service account would be empty. And the reason why is that if you go to your IAM page, so this is your IAM and admin, and it's going to list out all of your service accounts in here. You're going to see Compute Engine, Cloud Build, Cloud Services, your personal account, your AppSpot account. Basically, the name that this thing is filtering on is actually wrong. It's been updated since the code lab is built. And believe you me, I will be submitting a error report for that. So what I'm going to be doing is just deleting this out, pasting in, I didn't actually copy it, or I did. I think Windows is doing something weird with copy paste these days. Compute Engine default service account is what we actually want. And you can also see here too, the role, it's an editor, but it's also the secrets manager, secret accessor. So I'm going to run that. And now if I echo service account, I see this email address here. So it matches. That is my service account that will be used to access this thing. Yours will be different for that. So if you try to echo service account and it is empty, you can just set it directly if you just copy and paste the correct address. But if you want to learn a little bit about Bash and how you can use handy little filtering on the terminal, just make sure you update the name parameter. So we have our service account. Now we need to basically add that to the secrets manager role, which you see that it already was. I ran this command before. Yours probably didn't say secrets accessor before. Now it does after you run this. What we're going to do now is actually deploy the app. So we're going to expose it to the internet to be used. So let's deploy it. So gcloud run deploy. Again, we call it Kittenbot. We're going to pass it the image, location, and cloud build. And we're going to set its project ID with whatever your current project ID is. So this is going to run. Yes, we want unauthenticated invocations because this is a public-facing endpoint. Anybody can interact with it. We're not going to lock it down. So this will take several moments to run. I'll see you in a few minutes when it is actually live. Oh, okay. So that went a lot quicker than it did last time. The first time I tried running this, it took a solid 10 minutes to deploy and run. This is probably 30 seconds of real world time. So we see that our service has been deployed. We have a revision ID. So first revision, if we kept redeploying it, this revision ID would update. And we see the URL. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this very long and oddly named URL. And we're going to use this later on when we move over to Slack But basically, this is a live service that we could talk to. If you tried accessing it directly, you're going to get an error. Oops. Oops. Service URL is not part of it. Why did that copy? I just want to copy the URL here, please. And thank you. That's interesting. I didn't select that. You're going to get an error, cannot get slash. Basically, it's not responding to web applications, which makes sense, right? It is a Slack app. It is not a web-facing or web-serving app. But what we can also do too, if you want, is you can actually check this in the Cloud Run environment. So if you, there's a handy link again, but if you basically just go to Cloud Run, search for Cloud Run, go to the hamburger menu, find Cloud Run, you will see your bot pop up in here with whatever you called it. So you see its name, its region, what's the authentication, all the relevant information. And if you screw up, which is quite possible, I mean, again, I've been having issues with this all day, you can click logs and you can actually see what is going on with your app, right? What are the errors, error messages it's returning? Probably see like 401 errors in here, or 404 errors, or. And some of these are honestly probably going to be from the last deployment where I actually got this working because I named it the same thing. It's going to use the same information. But we have our bot. Now it is time to update our Slack interface. So you might remember from checking out the JavaScript file, or sorry, the Node application, which is technically a JavaScript file. The webhook URI has /API/messages, meaning that we're basically going to point the URL that we have here. We're going to tack on /API/messages, and that's what Slack will talk to. So if we go over to Slack here, and we find the event subscription page, we're going to enable events, meaning that this bot now has access to events, and we're going to give it the endpoint. And it's not service URL. I thought I got rid of that. At the very end here, you're going to tack on /API/messages. This will verify. And you actually have a little note in here saying if you typed it in too fast, it might actually screw up or it might be too slow. Just click retry and hopefully it should work. I see verified, meaning that Slack has successfully handshaked, has successfully interacted with the bot on Cloud Run. So the next step then is we want this bot to subscribe to some particular events. And these events are going to be message.im, which means that you get a direct message. We want message.groups, meaning that a private channel message can be read by the bot. We want message.channels, meaning that a message went to one of your channels, doesn't matter which one. And we also want message.mpim, multi-party direct message channel, so like a group chat type of thing. You can add whatever events you want. These are just some very basic ones to give your bot the permissions to interact with your channel. But depending on what you're doing, you might want more, you might want less. Just kind of depends on your preferences here. So I'm going to click Save. It's going to say, hey, your permission scopes have changed. Please redeploy your app or reinstall your app, which is fine. Let's go ahead and do that. We can review the permissions. If you did this earlier, you probably only saw one permission. Now it has multiple permissions. So let's go ahead and allow that. And in theory, this is the great moment of trying things out. Let's see if it worked. So I'm going to go back over to Slack here. And we see our Cloud Run bot test now appears under apps. So I'm going to click this bot and I'm going to say, hi. And I'm going to hit enter and yay, it worked. That was a legitimate yay. Very nerdy, horribly excited yay. So the bot has responded with meow and we get a little cat face emoji. Okay, so now let's go to our cloud demo channel, which we created just for this purpose. I'm going to tag my bot, so at whatever you called your bot. I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to add this bot to the channel. This is a Slack thing where if you're not in a channel, you can't see it or talk to it, so we're going to add the bot to the channel. I'm going to type hi in here. Bot says meow. I'm going to type hello. Bot says meow. I'm going to say blah, blah, blah. Bot should say nothing because it's only responding to hello or hi, right? I could do this in a, whatever other interaction that we want with our bots. Again, we could add different scopes. We could give it different permissions. If you want to make it a conversational bot, give it a bunch of emojis, give it a bunch of other things that it can handle. And if you want to dig into the Node.js of it, feel free to go nuts. I would honestly recommend trying out the extra credit here because what you would learn is how to make an update to an application and then redeploy it, or sorry, rebuild and redeploy it. It's just going to be basically redoing a handful of steps, so I'm not going to go through this here now. But definitely check it out. It's kind of fun, kind of interesting. And I also have some links in somewhere in the blog where basically you can have a SlackBot interact with that Google Knowledge Graph. It's one of their demo projects if you want to check that out. So last thing we have to do here is let's clean things up. So this is one of those ones where a bunch of stuff has happened. And depending on how frisky you're feeling, you can either just delete the whole project, which I would not personally recommend since I just used my main one, and if you got to this point, you probably did too. So you don't want to delete the whole thing. But you can just delete the deployment and all of the various things that you did. So that's what I'm going to go ahead here and do now. So I'm going to get rid of my Google Cloud Run application. So gcloud run services delete Kittenbot. So that will delete. I'm going to get rid of my secrets. So I don't want this token or the signing secret to exist anymore, meaning that nobody else can access them. So let's get rid of those. And then we have to get rid of our storage buckets. So this application used the Google storage bucket as the place to basically host everything. And I don't want it taking up space. If it takes up space in a bucket, it's consuming money. And I don't want that to happen while I'm not using this thing. So let's go ahead and delete the buckets as well. Oops, wrong one. That is the output that I should be seeing if I did gsutil ls. Again, gsutil is how you interact with storage buckets. We want to get rid of the app spot artifacts bucket. And you see that project ID in there. And then I also want to get rid of our cloud build bucket. And again, this is tied to a project ID. So if you have other things up on cloud build under this project ID, be kind of careful that you're not accidentally deleting something important. But I'm going to get rid of those. And then that's pretty much it. My bot is still here. Right, so if I go over to Slack, why do I keep losing Slack? So if I wrote hi again, it's not going to respond. Why doesn't it respond? We deleted the deployment. So there's nothing to respond to. Anyway, I hope that was helpful for you. I found this lab kind of interesting, mildly frustrating if you screw up and you don't realize it. But again, if you do, just go through the cleanup process, start from scratch, and have fun with it. Because honestly, bots are actually kind of to me, they're fairly interesting type of thing. I guess the only thing left to do here is I'm going to go over to basic information in my bot. I'm going to click delete app. So I'm going to get rid of the bot for good. And outside of this, we'll probably get rid of the workspace as well. Anyway, hope you have a wonderful day. I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.